The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Ewa Zborowska, and I am your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi Ewa, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy that you're here with me today, and I've been looking forward for a long time actually to speak to you on The Only Constant since I met you the first time at an analyst event actually. So thank you so much for being here, Ewa.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a huge pleasure. Podcasts are one of my favorite things in today's world, so happy I can be part of yours.
I think I feel like it's a little bit of a scoop, also because I don't have a penchant for analysts. I like that. I like the way, when you get the right ones, those who are able to cut through the noise. That's what you're supposed to do. I think not everyone always does that. Sometimes you add to the noise, but when you find the good ones, you just want to, latch onto them. And I think you're one of the good ones. So you can take that as you want.
Thank you. I'll take it as a huge compliment. But yeah, I must say, we know how difficult it's getting with all the craze happening on the market to really tell the signal from the noise. So on behalf of all of my colleagues, we are trying. That's all, that's all we can do, right? And it is also moving very, very fast. And everyone's an AI company right now, right? It must be really difficult. I could imagine. But let's get to that. First of all, Ewa, Wharton says that 74% of companies get positive results from AI, while MIT says that 95% of projects fail. Is it possible to fail and still be a positive result? Or are we working with some kind of, Schrodinger's AI here? I like this Schrödinger cat's comparison, because I think we are in a world where, depending how you feel about something, you will find reports, results, surveys that will support your opinion. So I'm always like, let's reverse it. Let's not look at the results. Let's see what we want to learn and seek numbers. I think a lot goes down to it depends. I know that we don't like this response, but I think with AI more than with anything, it very much depends. And you can easily imagine an organization where they have good outcomes, positive outcomes. They achieve what they want to achieve in one part of the company or with one workload or with one use case, and absolutely failing at others. What we are seeing, for example, if you look at how many pilots and proof of concepts companies run, and then how many of those go into production, it used to be like 10% last year. So of course, you will see those saying it's not working, but maybe in some tiny portion of what we are doing, it is working. However, I think the challenge with reports like, especially the one from MIT that I think was quoted everywhere and by everyone, is that they really make a headline and not everyone cares to look deeper. We live in times of abundance of information. So we have this tendency to look at the headline and maybe those 3 bullet points that summarize whatever comes further, and we don't go there. It really is worth it, especially if we read something that is like really if 95% of companies say they are not getting anything out of AI, how come we end up with everyone investing in AI so much? We should all stop thinking it leads to anything if, 9 out of 10 or more than 9 of 10 achieve nothing. So I'm always in this mode of, okay, let's read further. Let's see who was asked those questions. What was the methodology? Was it really a question about positive outcomes, or was it about how they feel? Who was asked? It's really interesting. We saw a survey where 2 groups of people were asked about exactly this: positive outcome of AI implementation. C-suite, boards, and managers. And if you ask C-suite, everything was fine, rosy, success was there. You talk to managers, you talk to people with hands-on experience, getting their hands dirty, doing things. They are like, well, not really there with the success. So again, even within one organization, you can talk about the same project and hear different opinions. So I would say we are probably not in a world when everyone succeeds. We are probably not in a world where everyone fails. We are somewhere in the middle, and we need to be really, really, really peculiar when we look at or when we want to assess the success of AI adoption.
So there's like a lot of slideware, right? There's a lot of people saying that this works well in a PowerPoint. It looks nice in a PowerPoint, AI transformation, right? And then there's a lot of people trying it out, right? And then it doesn't really work the same way they wanted it to. And we need to make those 2 ends meet.
This is my biggest pain point at this point on the market, I think. Because as analysts, as you said, we are sitting somewhere in between vendors and service providers and everyone pushing and selling AI to the world, and end users, customers, organizations who really want to make it work for them. And I think, to your point of slides that can tell you everything, yes, they are slides, and they will take anything. You can put what you want there and it will work because it's in a slide. And I think vendors do not understand how impossibly overwhelming they can be with new things being thrown at customers almost every week. Not to mention every half year or once a year, we have one of those huge events where you have, 50 or 100 new things announced. And then imagine you are a manufacturing company, even with a nice IT team, already digitalized to some extent, with a lot of legacy, with day-to-day business that needs to run. And suddenly those people get information that, hey, whatever you've been working on over the last 12 months, not necessarily important because we have new things for you to use. They are not able to absorb that. So I think I would really like to see vendors be maybe slightly more realistic and not necessarily pushing new things because others are pushing new things. I think this is how it works. We need to talk about new things because everyone else is talking about new things. Well, how about you stop and maybe regroup and show how those work on customers' end? Be more focused on real outcomes rather than saying, well, 5 new language models that can be applied, and customers are like, okay, apply, but for what? And what am I getting out of it other than my mails will be summarized quicker?
I have one quick note is that I had Tom Reiner from Pack on the podcast as well before the summer, and he also said outcomes, exactly that word. I think that's, maybe I'm just getting for the analysts who like the word outcomes instead of tech, but I really love that. So I think I get where that's going. But what I want to say is that it's the same thing when you go I'm a consultant, right? So when you go to companies and you're like, it's not your knowledge that's the problem; it's the time that's the problem. So people out there, if you say, "Oh, I won't show you how to set up this system," just tell them, show them how to do it, because they'll be like, "Okay, I can try this out," and then 2 weeks later they'll call you and say, I don't have time to do it anyway, so can you help me do it? You're selling your time and your availability and your ability to bridge things. It's not because people can't understand, it's just they don't have time or mental capacity to do it. Is it the same thing you're saying here, basically?
I think very much so. And I think there is also this expectation because that customers will do all the homework. So I often hear vendors saying, so we have all those new language models, or we have all those new applications, or we have agents in our applications. Just go and use. Come up with ideas where it can be applied in your organization. And to your point, you as a company, you need time to know where you want to use it. Because it's not necessarily that you don't have time to actually deploy it. You need to maybe do a little bit of thinking to really understand where it makes sense. So you can have this positive outcome.
You have tons of things you're already doing, and now suddenly you have things to do with AI, right? Now you have to think about what to do with AI, right? It's like, but what about you don't want your monthly report then, or what is it you don't want me to do then?
Exactly. Or you are expected to understand how this new technology works. So you need to build capabilities around it, or find someone who will help you with it. You need to do the homework of understanding where it can be applied in your organization, and do the homework of making sure that your infrastructure, your data, your IT estate so far is ready for it, because you don't want to end up with islands of AI spread across your company. You want this AI to be part of a wider IT that you already have in your organization. So
it can be maintained, and operationalized. Yes.
Yeah. So it makes sense. And we are hearing increasingly often from customers saying, okay, deployment is one thing, integrating is totally different beast, and also needs to be addressed one way or another, right? And then on top of that comes the board saying, how come we are not investing in AI heavily because everyone else is doing it? So that FOMO is still present, especially around C-level people who simply want to a little bit, boast how much their organizations already invest in those latest and newest technologies. So it can be really tough for, let's say, an average IT director or AI director to be really able to say, yes, this is how I adopted AI and this is my success.
Yeah, but it's also the exactly what you said, deployment versus integration, right? We always say that maybe in our ERP department, at least where we what you call help people set up ERP systems, we say maybe you have an installed ERP, but do you have an implemented ERP? And I think the difference between those two things, right? Implemented, that means integrated. It's your processes work, right? It fits your processes. It's not just theirs. Have you seen that Monty Python sketch with the machine that goes beep, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best analogy for how a lot of companies have been buying AI right now. We have a machine that goes beep here. Bring it in.
Yeah.
Let's look at our AI that speaks with our data. What do we want to talk to our data about? Have no clue, but we have a machine that does it.
I think this is one of the largest challenges today, that before we touch those, let's say, this tech side of it. So do we have infrastructure? Is data ready? How is it going to work, this AI, with whatever applications we already have? The customers need to answer, I think, 3 questions. First of all, okay, what do we want to do with this AI? Like, why do we need it? Do we actually need AI, or will good old automation work here? Right? Because I think the moment you start finding problems to solve with AI, maybe it's better not waste time on investing in AI. The second is, do you know how you want to do it? And there is this tech part to it, but also there is maybe something you alluded to. So do I know how my business processes work today? And do I know how adding AI is going to change them. And am I ready to change those business processes? Because if you have a business process that, for example, requires 3 people to sign something, and then you automate and suddenly you have only one person signing a document, what about those 2 people no longer needed to sign something? It's probably very basic and simple example, but it really shows you that business needs to adapt. And as a company, you need to really plan for it. You cannot throw it at people and expect that they will go with it. And finally, once you do it, or even before you do it, do you know how you are going to measure the success or the outcome or whatever? How are you going to say in 3 months that it was that the money was smartly spent? It wasn't just yet another pilot or yet another proof of concept. Because you can have many of those, but, well, maybe the point is to have fewer, but really see the result.
But what the Silicon Valley tech bros will tell you is that, but you need to do things you're not doing today, so you don't even know what it is you're supposed to do, right? So you're saying, what do we want to do? But the problem is you can't measure the success if you don't know what you want to do, right? And you can't even get any kind of success if you don't know how you're going to do it. So I completely agree with you, and I think also that's close to home. Let's start from where we are. Let's move from here. But the market is just saying you need to do AI because then use cases will unveil themselves to you like magic. You will go from being Blockbuster to Netflix just because you started doing streaming. Blockbuster knew about streaming. It's not like they had an entrenched business model. That's the problem. It is not because they didn't know about.
Of course,
streaming.
and in case of Blockbuster, it was very much long-term leases that were signed, and they were not able to go out of those contracts. So exactly. I think, well,
it's not because they didn't know about the tech. I think that's really important. Exactly. It's not because they didn't know about the tech; they knew it.
Yeah, and I think what you said of big tech saying, well, here's this new shiny thing, and you will figure it out how to use it. It's not so simple because there is day-to-day business that needs to continue. So people don't have 20% of the time that they can dedicate to coming up with new ideas. Mm-hmm. It would be ideal. And we know that there are companies doing it. And there are companies saying, yes, we run those hackathons and we give people space and sandboxes so they can play with AI and come up with new ways of using technology, so maybe we can do something differently. And this is great. And I really admire companies that have resources to do that. But an average company probably struggles with that. And the other thing that we need to remember is that, this famous innovation diffusion curve, right? You have those innovators and then you have followers and then you have these late followers or laggards who don't want to do anything. First of all, it applies also to customers of those big tech companies. Some customers are those early adopters. They will be crazy interested in using anything that you give them to play with. And many will be like, okay, let's wait, let's see, where are we going to end? Is it going to work for me? But even within an organization, you will have employees who are those eager to use new things people. And you will have those who will say, I have 3 more projects to do and I'm using whatever tools I have and really not interested in now learning new tools. Are they going to help me? They will not going to help me. We already see a lot of reports saying that on one hand, it's helping, on other, it's adding work for you, like for developers, for example. So really be mindful of those non-tech aspects of business, because I think in case of AI, they become increasingly more important and are very often underappreciated.
Yeah, but I also think that we're sort of missing some of the points as well, right? That there's some by people being disappointed about these over expectations, right? Then you end up also drowning out the good examples, because there's so much productivity to be gained from this. I think there's like tons of things this does very well. I think the productivity for code is good. But then you hear about someone doing full projects and going production and things going crazy, right? And because we sort of overdid it, or someone firing 3,000 developers, or these things, right? And then the market moves in the other direction. Oh, it doesn't work at all. But there is a lot of value here in the middle. It's just, I feel like sometimes we're getting into some kind of sci-fi business dream, right? So we see a future, and then we think then we can do it, right? We see agents everywhere, right? But no one's really asked themselves, what does an inexhaustible, fully capable agent actually mean? And is anyone ever really already, do we even know what a fully exhaustible process is, right? I think those some basic questions here. We see a future, right? We envision it. We've seen R2D2, we've seen HAL, we've seen all those things. But so now we think that can be business. And then to tie it back to my question, then it becomes positive to just do AI, because, we're starting to do AI. So the 74% positive results is just, we've done something. We are AI enabled now. Ta-da! We bought Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini. Get my point.
And quite often that's the point, right? So instead of building rockets and flying to the moon, we are just writing mails quicker, right? Or I don't know, searching for something quicker, which is not wrong, as you said. There is a lot of value in it. I talked to one of the companies that around software development, and they said, in actual development of a software, gains not that impressive, but in all the work around it and what developers often hate. So writing documentation, running a project, taking notes from meetings, etc., super helpful and really moving projects forward. So I think what we, again, going back to my point on people being overwhelmed and too many things thrown at them every day at pace that we cannot cope with, we are afraid, I'm getting a bit philosophical here, but I think we are afraid to maybe sit in silence and let ourselves think for a moment, right? So instead of going like crazy after, depending whether you like Star Wars or Skynet, right? We are all fall victims to pop culture. But instead of thinking of this, how about we sit and say, okay, let's stop for a moment. Let's look at what we have, what we want to achieve, where those gains would make most sense for us. Because if you are a pharma company applying AI for drug discovery, it's a huge advantage and you should be doing it. But if you are in the part of business that deals with invoices, maybe simple image recognition, seeing whether there is the invoice is okay, not okay, is super helpful. It's not crazy sexy. It's not very let's fly to the moon, but in day-to-day business, it's going to help you. But again, I'm coming back to this. Sit in silence and give yourself a chance to think about it without being bombarded with new things every day, making you feel guilty that you are not flying to the moon. Not everyone has to fly to the moon.
No, but it's also this, the funny thing is, everyone flying to the moon, but they say that, right? They say AI will fix climate change, will fix medicine, cancer. I don't, the level of promises that have been made on what AI will fix, and then reality is that, I was couple of weeks back, a month back, ChatGPT, Sam Altman came out and said, now ChatGPT will listen when you tell it not to use an M dash. And I just remember, and there were memes about that as well, right? AI will fix climate change. No, not yet, but it will fix your M dashes, right? I was like, oh, that's underwhelming. But that's the problems people are having with it. And this is this noise, the noise of the other side, the medicine, the lawyers will be unemployed, the analysts will be, who will need them? That's also a thing, right? But really, guys, come on, can we just get back to business and speak about our processes and the value that analysts are driving, the value that lawyers are driving, the value we're producing, and say, how can we just make that a little bit smarter, a little bit faster? and let's not automate all the controls away because we actually need them, or you get my point, right?
Of course, and I think again falling victims to shiny headlines. If you write, okay, you are going to be there's going to be more value in doctors being able to spend 10 more minutes with a patient. It's not as exciting as we are going to get rid of cancer.
No.
Right?
No.
Not to mention that, I mean, I'm a really deep believer in discoveries in medicine with the help of AI that can eradicate certain diseases.
Yeah.
But immediately in my head of systemic thinking, I'm like, still not enough. We can have all the AI solving all the problems or curing all the diseases. But before that lands with individual patients, you have to have budgets, money, political will, changed healthcare systems. I think we often talk about technology as if it operates in a vacuum and is not part of a much wider system that surrounds us.
Yes, thank you very much. Integration, as you said. I've said that also previously on the podcast, that I have to tell people when I'm doing presentation that there's a world out there, guys. There's a world. There's, God made the world in 7 days, but he didn't have an installed legacy base, is my favorite quote, right? And that's, but it's a really, really good one. But it's true, right? And people need to understand that AI is not good. AI is good when it's integrated. That also adds some, and I want to ask you about this later as well, about Europe and all that, but also add some perspectives on regulation, because it's not about just doing AI immediately, it's doing AI at scale, safely and easily, saying that this is compliant with these acts, which means that I can use it without worrying about this or that, because it's already been assessed. That's adoption, right? That's scale. That's invisible AI that just, we just use it and we just go crazy, right? And I think we're sort of missing some points here.
Yeah. And regulations, I love them. I'm so disappointed with the EU going soft on some of the regulations. And of course, when I say I love them, it doesn't mean I like them to be an inhibitor to innovation, right? I'm not saying we should forbid people from using technology. But I think the smarter the regulation, the safer people feel adopting technology. And we hear it across the board. We hear it from banks saying, we are really interested in AI, but it's because we are highly regulated, which means we have certain limits within which we know we are allowed to safely operate. And even surveys that we run show that companies say lack of regulation is a challenge for AI adoption. So they say, had we have regulations, we would be more willing to implement AI, because now we don't know. We may even start adopting something and we will end up somewhere that, okay, maybe it will be only wasted budget, but maybe we will end up in violation of some regulations that will come up later. So it's better to have something regulated and make sure that you can adopt in a safe way. Not to mention that, let's be honest, at least in Europe, a lot of those regulations really at least aim at protecting individuals, citizens, patients,
yes,
employees, and it's important.
But it's also, I think, Kate O'Neill said, if you're in a deregulated market, it just means the responsibility is on you. She said that on the podcast in episode 50. And I love that quote. It's the same thing you're saying. The same thing the banks are saying. If there's no regulation here, it just means that it's my responsibility to figure out if it fits with the rest of it. Whoa.
And to your point on big tech telling us different things, I'm really tired with hearing all the time that it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm not coming across, I don't know, any unwanted content online. Or that it's my responsibility to make sure that my application is safe, that I'm not leaking my private information. Like anything we do online at this point or in digital world is expected to be our responsibility. And of course, it is our responsibility, but to a certain extent. there is a limit to how much we can think about everything. It would be nice for those, it's not like that in pharma industry that we talked about it. It's not like someone sells medicine and tells you, well, Lasse, just be careful with how you're using it because it's your responsibility, right? No. There are certain regulations that say that, okay, this type of drug can be available OTC, the other needs to be prescribed by the doctor. There are certain amounts of that you can take. And of course, it's your responsibility to not take more than your doctor tells you to take. But, those regulations are here. So how about we take good examples of how regulation makes sense and apply to technology?
I thought about something the other day where I called enterprises like anxious organizations, basically, because there's not been the analyst firm. I'm not saying you did. There's multiple analysts in analyst firms, but every analyst firm over the last 15 years have been inventing new C-suites at some point, I think. Just saying, we need this new C-suite, we need blah, blah. And I started thinking, well, why do we say that? Because I always try to figure out what is the productive why the things that we have right now that we're annoyed with, I try to turn around and say, why is it productive? Can I figure out why is this seemingly anachronistic setup productive still? And that's because it's built not on production or doing new things. It's built on accountability, right? It's built on responsibility. That's why, CIOs, might have a CTO doing fun things, but it's a CIO who owns the risk. So it's him in the end who says yes or no. He is the man in charge. He is the real C-level, right? He's the executive. It's not the fun guy. It's the guy doing the responsibility, the accountability part, because that's in the end what the board wants. That's what the market wants, right? So when Copilot comes out, for instance, at Ignite this year, a couple of months back, and says, we've now added a security suite to Copilot, right? Microsoft comes out and do that. I'm like, but that's like 2.5 years after you launched it. How then you're working against enterprise adoption, because every enterprise silos, enterprise structures built on accountability, and you have been, right now they're fixing it. It's much better now, but you've been a non-accountable software, AI. No wonder your adoption is low.
Because it's nice not to be accountable, right? Held accountable. It's nice to know that you don't have to take responsibility, or you tell someone else to take this responsibility. I think, speaking of C-suite, I think I'm with you on that. This traditional built on accountability C-suite still holds. I think what we really need is more collaboration in between different silos within organizations.
Yeah, but then you need to share the responsibility. You need to figure out how to share it then. That's the problem. That's my problem.
But I think it's easier if those, if not even the responsibility itself is shared, but at least certain things are discussed within all the stakeholders. So it's not like, finance and accounting or marketing comes up with the idea of deploying AI agents. And of course, anyone can deploy AI agents, as vendors are telling us now. And then they maybe come up with something. And once they see, well, maybe it should be integrated with something else, they go to a CIO and say, well, how about we integrate that? And then he says, okay, whatever, we can integrate. But who's going to manage those agents and give them access rights? And then they go to CISO, and CISO says, oh my God, you haven't talked to me about it. And I say no, because it makes no sense, or I have no idea what you want to do with it. So I'm not happy with it. And it's a mess. So I'm saying more, not even share this responsibility, but give yourself a chance to talk with everyone at the beginning. So you end up with people, first of all, feeling that someone respects them and understands their responsibility. Because when security people sometimes say we are not agreeing to someone, it's not because they are not nice and they don't want to let you do something. It's because they feel responsible. So they know that they need to do certain things in a certain way. And it would be nice.
Someone will be on their backs, right? If they mess up,
of course. And it would be nice to understand it. And of course, the other way around, right? It cannot take half a year if marketing needs something quicker. But then again, meet and have a chat, because otherwise you are going to end up, clashing horns, but there's not going to lead you anywhere.
Yeah. So that, basically what you're saying is, saying that the future is always sort of complex, right? So let's be agile in the ways we make our decisions between the C-suites. And I think that's a culture thing. It makes total sense, right? And I couldn't agree more on that. But I just think that we need to stop just sitting down and reinventing new 3-letter C-suites, right? Because it seems so it seems arrogant. That is my problem. It seems arrogant to me.
I think sometimes it's also another aspect.
CAIO, do you really need a chief AI? What? No, I don't.
Well, I was thinking about it recently, looking at some research someone was presenting, because we are it's easy to come up with yet another CAIO or chief ethics officer or responsible AI officer, or whatever. A lot of those can be listed. But then quite often those people are appointed, but they are not given prerogatives and they are not given a budget. So they are not really
accountable.
They have no executive power.
No.
So why even have them? Why not?
They're not accountable. They're simply not accountable.
But they are also not able to do anything, right?
Yeah,
so they can be there. So maybe it would be better to see how capabilities.
How can you enable your CIO to be an ethics officer
do it in other places within the organization where, of course, it makes sense, because it's important to maybe have someone responsible for AI, who knows more on AI, because as we agreed that CIO guy or lady usually have already a lot on their plate. So have someone help them, but not necessarily create someone separate who, again, will be clashing horns with them because they will be, for example, applying for the same budget. And again, we are seeing that this is one of the challenges that customers have. They say there is a conflict because there is a different budget for AI and there is different budget for IT. Why? Why AI can't be part of maybe wider technology budget within the organization?
Do you remember RPA days where I started saying that already in 2020 or something like that? So people were we've saved so much money on you doing RPA. Okay. And I told them very clearly, if you're still measuring your RPA value, it's because you're still a project. I just said, no one is sitting down and saying how much money is SAP saving us, yearly. They don't do that. It's just a thing we have, and it's running so many automations, right? There's one guy managing it. You're 8 guys managing what? 10 bots or what? And but get my point, right? So as long as you're still saying on aggregate over 5 years we've saved this amount of money, okay, you're a project. You're not something that's take as a given. You're not invisible tech. You're not a success. Sorry, guys.
So that's a little bit this discussion that we now have as a market, right? How to calculate ROI on AI implementation. Because if AI is like a very special project that you can count ROI on, that's okay. But when you say AI is something everyone will be using, it's like counting ROI on Office 365. I don't think anyone calculates that. We are just simply giving this as a tool to everyone at the company to just do their work, and no one expects ROI to be plus 100.
Exactly my point, right? So if you're still measuring that from your AI project, it's still an immature project. It's just not tech. It's not IT. It's not CIO stuff yet. It's just a fun little thing you do on the side. Anyway, but on that as well, right? So on a little bit change of focus maybe, but you're an analyst, right? And it's all about cutting through the noise like this as well, right? What percentage of vendor slides right now is AI slop? Not saying that it's written by AI, but just AI, blah, blah, blah. You remember every company was data-driven, right? And every company, crypto, blah, blah. Now everything is AI.
Now everyone is AI-enabled, AI-embedded. And I don't want to say it's a it's a slop because, there is thinking and work behind it. So it wouldn't be kind to say that.
Very diplomatic.
But you can really see how, for example, sometimes companies that offer reliable, needed technology that is not AI adds AI to this, to what they have to offer, simply because they think if we don't say AI, someone will think we are outdated or we are not up there yet, right? So I think sometimes we as a market analysts or those writing about the market, we should take a little bit of the responsibility, because we also fall into this rabbit hole of everything is AI. And suddenly if someone is not talking about AI, we're like, well, is it really relevant or is it still interesting? We want those new things. We also fall for those new shiny things. So I think it really... So there is this one group of those that add AI simply because this is expected. Yeah. And it may be an element of, traditional, let's call it this, traditional technology that they offer. And of course, there is a lot of new things announced all the time that, as I said, is a little bit confusing to customers. And also, sometimes you have a feeling like, are you showing us something that actually brings value and that AI think is something new that you are selling? Or is it like repackaging of what you already had, but you painted AI in order to be able to grab headlines and talk about AI, right? So I think it's less a question of the quality is not being there, but more a question of how much you feel you need to talk about it.
Yeah.
Again, I'm feeling like the need for silence is becoming like a threat for this.
Maybe I'm also just, but I'm also just maybe touching on, because I spent a couple of months being an analyst as well in my career, and when you talk to IT service companies, which I know you do a lot as well, right? That's your focus area. I thought they were so like. I almost fell asleep during these presentations, right? Sometimes, because it's like, we do industry cloud, we do, AI ops on your cloud infrastructure. And they all were like, you all do the same. And they all were like, we do it in a very special way. We've invented this new thing. Yeah, like everyone else also is doing, And seriously, this was just my very short experience. Like, whoa, you really think you're unique, but you're doing exactly what the other guys are doing as well. What's your rule of thumb for cutting through that noise?
I think it's a little bit like a human thing. So it's the same on customers end. Everyone is super special and they need a customized application, and their processes are like 80% the same as everyone else's. I think for me, first of all, I've been doing it for 20 years. So on one hand, I may come across as a little bit disillusioned. On the other, it takes a little more to really get me interested, and it's easier for me to see patterns. So I don't have a problem with, 7 vendors saying the same thing that they are doing and thinking they are unique, because I've seen 7 and I know it's not unique, but it shows me certain pattern of where, for example, way of delivering services goes, right? Or how pricing models change. So for me, it's less a noise. It's much more pattern recognition if I hear something for the 2nd, 3rd, 5th time. So in a way, it can even be helpful. Where I have a challenge with vendors presenting what they have is that they really don't feel like talking about things that didn't work out. So you usually get the announcement of something new, and usually customers who are successful in implementing or deploying this. I really think if at some point someone decides to say, hey, so here's the list of things that failed, or before we reach the point to present you with this product, this is the struggle that we've been through. And we also have some customers who struggled with implementing, and there were some fails. At the end of the day, it may be a success. At the end of the day, it can be a happy customer. But don't be so afraid of saying sometimes some things do not work.
No, they're afraid
I'm not
that
sure.
you'll
Maybe
they're afraid
I'm not
you'll
sure.
be
Maybe
thinking
it's too
something
bold.
different. Yeah, they're afraid that you'll say something different, negative about them, saying that, oh, they didn't have that under control, right? And it's a weird thing, right?
But I think everybody knows that. Sometimes I think, like, if you've been through any project, you know that it's not, walk in a park from beginning to end.
Yes.
Right?
You learn from your failures.
There must be some struggle. It cannot be that everything is always perfect and you end up with nice slides that you can present.
So is that what you're looking for when you're talking to them, Eva? Is that where things went wrong, or do you try to probe at that? I'm looking for your system prompt as an analyst. You see, Eva.
So with whatever is happening now on the market, a lot of things, as I said, we've been doing this long enough to really not easily get carried away with new things. It takes a little to impress me. So not every shiny headline makes my heart pop and think, oh my God, something new that's going to be fantastic. If anything, it makes me think, okay, let's read and look deeper. We still look for trends. We still look for patterns. We still look for how it's presented, and we still look for sustainable business models. So whenever someone comes and says, oh, here's a great new idea, we're like, okay, what's the business model behind it? Is it just a new technology you are throwing at the market, or are you really going to make money out of it? So, but those are those things that we looked for before. What I think is different now with the pace of AI changing is that at least I dedicate much more time to really looking deeper, looking beyond this title and looking beyond those 3 bullet points. I spent time reading documents, looking for methodologies, trying to really understand what is behind those slides. It's not enough. So just looking at the slides and listening to presentation is not enough. Going to those vendors, having a chat with them, they are more open. They are willing to tell you things they may not necessarily be willing to tell everyone, because they know that we are also there to help them understand the market. And of course, we have this privilege of listening to users. And it's a place where you really see reality check of what vendors are saying. So this telling a signal from the noise, very much day-to-day chats with those implementing technology is super helpful, because then you see this gap in between what the market says where they want to be and where the market is.
You see what one vendor says versus what another vendor says, but then you also, in these bigger reports, check out what their customers are actually saying about these projects that they did. You have some, reference customers you speak to, which adds some depth to it. So this holistic view is actually also why. That's why I love analysts as well, right? But
maybe one more thing that I would add, especially with AI now, is that I think before or at the beginning of my work, it was really enough to look at technology and maybe understand business a little bit, and maybe have a little bit of understanding of individual industries because they do things or they don't do things. And it was enough. I think now we need to look much wider. So you look at the macroeconomics, you look at geopolitics, and with AI, super important. You cannot look at chips or models or other elements and not think, okay, what it means for American administration, where China is in it. How do we feel about it in Europe?
I want to ask you about this as well. I just want to close down this little, the vendor thing, but I remember when generative AI came out, everyone was suddenly finding $1 billion to do some AI training. All the big GSIs did that, I remember. And at the same time, they all shut down their $1 billion metaverse projects, right? So I'm just saying, are we beyond the metaverse level now with AI, do you think? Are we still a little bit in that? Because it seemed very simple for them to switch it back then.
I I really hope we are. And I think even as we do our work, you as a consultant, me as an analyst, we see that those tools are useful. They can be helpful if used smartly, if you are responsible, if you do all your homework to understand where you need to verify and check things, etc., etc. So I think it is further than metaverse that I have no idea whether it ever landed anywhere in terms of actual use cases. I mean, I know a few use cases that are like super specific, like some trainings that can be done or some therapy sessions that can be done. So there are those use cases, of course, but it's nothing.
It's so funny that metaverse, right? It was like,
compared to.
People thought the metaverse was a product, right? But it's a societal development. It's a thing we do. It happens. It's not something you buy,
So I really want to believe that we are past that. We are not with AI, Gen AI. We are not there. But there's still a lot of smoke, I think.
Yeah.
I think we had this discussion internally recently whether we are. It is a bubble or it's not a bubble. Is it going to pop? It's not going to pop. If it's going to pop, will it be like one huge boom or will it be more like .com slow popping up of individual companies? And there are still things that we are seeing that make you maybe a little bit, or at least makes me a little bit uncomfortable in a sense of, amount of money invested so far.
Yeah.
How circular this money is, right? So one investing in another, investing in another, investing in another. And you're like, okay, so is it still the same billion or we are not now talking 5 billion, but still the same billion was invested in circles? So some companies still having very unsustainable business models, if they even can be called business models. So there are those elements where make you think there needs to be some kind of reckoning for this market. And I think with customers, we are already seeing this reckoning because we see a slight slowdown in how companies think about investing. Everyone was crazy for the last 2 years, proof of concepts, pilots, fear of missing out. We need to do something. And suddenly now we more often hear, okay, we are not opening new projects. We are more thinking, let's see what we've achieved and maybe take this 15 minutes of silence that I mentioned to sit and see what to do next. So it really brings value to our business and not is, just a fun thing to do.
But it's a funny thing because it's like double to me because I think that's the big C-level, board level discussion, right? That let's stop. That they don't want to talk about it anymore. They've spent a couple of years having nothing but AI sessions, right? And now suddenly, but I see very clearly that in business support management, at least in Denmark, right, there's a pressure right now where everyone's like, we have AI on our budget for next year, and we've had AI as part of our goals for next year. So now they're trying to say, let's do something real with this.
Yeah,
and let's look into transactions and all that, but no more of the fluff for boardrooms. People don't want fluffy presentations anymore. And I also get that whenever I go out to present, they're like, but we don't want any fluff. We don't nothing about big market and R2D2 or something. No, please don't do that. We will have full self-driving in 10 years. Tell me what's going on right now. What can we do now? That's all. That's the focus right now. And I think that's sobering. I think we're sort of sobering up a little bit like that.
And I think what we are also seeing is that suddenly when you go to this level of discussion with people who simply do their work day to day, you suddenly realize how much legacy is already there. And that it cannot be, out of the window and you start everything from scratch. So whatever you are going to do, there are processes and applications and people already in place.
Yes.
And those need to be taken into account when you want to move with AI forward, right? And I think, again, to what's maybe slightly different with AI now than with all the other technologies I've seen for 20 years, I don't think we've ever seen a technology that sits or the adoption of which sits so close to people and how they think about technology and culture within the organization and all those. I don't like the name soft, but soft, not non-tech elements that really impact, the trajectory of adoption.
But that's also what, Lauren Pratt, she said that AI is the only business technology that has its own sci-fi genre. So that's a quote I've used a lot in the podcast since she said it in episode 25, because I love it. And that's also why, it feeds on the imagination, right? It gets into canteen rooms and lunches and coffee breaks. Everyone talks about it. AI ethics or I don't want to use it. I don't want to get redundant. I need to use it. People talk about it. And grandpa parents talk about it. Everyone talks about it.
For me, the sobering moment where I thought, okay, everyone is talking about it. I was going home on one of the Saturdays afternoons, and there was a radio on, and it was like golden hits. So those playing songs from the 70s and 80s for like the demographics of people like me or older. And in between songs, the broadcaster said, so let's discuss this generative AI and what it means for us. And I was like, whoa, if we are discussing generative AI on a radio, playing songs for, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s on Saturday afternoon, it really shows you that it's slightly different. No one discusses ERPs on programs like this, with all respect to ERPs, right? And I think it also translates into how sometimes this AI is introduced in organizations. So usually it was like new tech at work, and then suddenly you had it at home, right? With computers, with laptops, with everything. And here suddenly it's people saying, okay, so I'm using those chats and whatever at home. How about I use it at work? We had it a little bit with mobile technologies, I think, before, but I think now it's much more visible. And again, if not managed the right way, shadow IT is going to eat you up.
Yeah, but I think that's a good perspective as well, right? That it's really, really proliferated in a completely different way than most other technologies we've ever seen, right? Even internet back then was mostly corporate, and then some people, nerds, going to the library to log on to something, right? Back in the 90s, right? But this is different. It is completely different. I was speaking about it with my wife's 95-year-old grandmother as well, right? Just slightly, right? She doesn't understand it, but everyone knows about it. It's on everyone's mind. People talk about it. Let's get back to the thing you said about the geopolitics. Is Europe really falling behind on AI, Ewa?
So I looked at some numbers, and doesn't seem so. In a sense that when we ask, for example, in one of our surveys, a question, okay, how many projects have this positive outcome, AI projects? In Europe, I think more than 30% said that more than 50% of their projects are positive. And this is slightly higher than the global average, right? We do want to invest. I think there is certain level of, maybe we are a little bit more conservative in a sense that we are not dropping everything and going after AI immediately. But it's not like European companies say, we are not doing it and we let the US or China do it. Of course, if you look at the level of applications or tools of vendors, we don't have vendors that are in China or in the US. So in that sense, with innovation, probably we are more customers than providers of those. But at the same time, if you look at the number of local language models, that are super important. They are super important for two reasons. One, small languages that are not necessarily served well by global models, right? And language being the vehicle for values and history and culture. And the other is a lot of those small languages are open weight or open source, which means they are great for research, for development, for academia, for trying new things, for startups, etc., etc. So it's needed. And almost every country in this region has an initiative, 1, 2, 3 initiatives like this. So there is a lot of happening. Question is whether we will be able to commercialize it, whether there will be a go-to-market behind it. Of course, those models often lack enterprise grade vibe, so they are not necessarily for enterprises. But I wouldn't say we are falling apart. And
I actually, Eva, I'm just gonna, because maybe I just thought about now, maybe you're actually falling for a little trick I played here, because I asked you, is Europe falling behind? And can you even speak about Europe as a whole on this?
Probably we usually think, okay, Europe, the EU, because there are certain forces that play across all the countries, like some part of the regulation, certain approaches to certain things, those language models.
But
right?
you look at Germany is one of the funniest countries been talked about always as not digital transformed at all, right? And Denmark, just north of the border, has been for years the most digitally enhanced society in the world, right? So
this is probably one of those things. Like it's easy to say, well, we in Europe, and of course, if you realize Europe is made out of so many very different countries. The other thing, not maybe slightly more political now, but also linked to technology, is, well, how do we see digital sovereignty in Europe?
Yes.
There is no one way of seeing it, right? We have war in Ukraine, and suddenly you see that the way countries like Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, Baltic states look at sovereignty completely different than how France or Germany look at it, right? Because, this, how close you are to war really impacts that.
It does.
So, yeah, I might have fallen a little bit for Europe, but absolutely agree with you that it very much depends where you land, right?
When people are like, US is so far ahead and Europe is falling, I always think about, whenever I have calls with people, maybe not in Silicon Valley, but in other parts of the US, they often have cable phones, and fax machines and paper and behind them. I'm like, guys, seriously, have you been to Denmark? I don't even know what those things are anymore, right? And I know they have them in Germany still, but and I know part of, as you said, with the war, part of the reason in Germany is also that there is this Stasi, you know what your data can be used for. People remember data being used badly against them, right? And we don't in Denmark. We're just like, Second World War hardly even happened in Denmark. Well, we didn't have coffee, okay, that was terrible. There was this funny series from Second World War in Denmark, and before that, a long, it's called Matador. It's one of the biggest series in Denmark, a tale of who we were. And the worst part about the Second World War was that they didn't have coffee, really. That's what they celebrated after the war. Oh, we can get good coffee again. And, just try to go to Warsaw, try to go to Kiev, try to go to Berlin, try to go to Dresden, to try to go anywhere in Europe, right? So that's maybe also why we're so trusting. We trust things in Denmark, and maybe that's part of it as well.
I mean, and there are good things that are linked with it. In Poland, we are probably less trustworthy, and unlike, yes. I realize that, for example, with whatever happened so far with technology, like privacy is out the window. Like I don't think anything is private anywhere, but still there are certain things I would never ever discuss with any of those chats.
No,
and I know a lot of people who do.
We do in Denmark as well. I think everyone, and most Danes do too.
Healthcare, mental health. Why would you ever? And people do that. And this is why I say, if we know people are using those tools in those ways, how come we don't have regulations that make it safe for them to use it this way, right? But then again, question is, do you realize, who can read it and how they can read it and what they can use it for, even if they don't link it exactly to you as a person, right? But I think
it's like going back to I think one of the first episodes of the podcast, I said that I don't mind regulation, but what I want is also, I want standards. I want things to be built. I want things to be defined. I want digital infrastructure to be high on the agenda. Why don't we have an EU, clean social media? So schools where parents communicate with each other about school events. And why don't we have things? Everyone uses it. We use it all the time.
Yeah, because I think it's not about telling people not use it. And regulations, okay, when I say regulations, I not necessarily mean like legal frameworks. You can have certain standards. It's a little bit like, when construction, not to talk about pharma again, but construction, right? If you are building a bridge, there are certain standards that you need to keep, right? You know that it has to be done this way, and you need to meet and have those certifications, etc., etc. And it doesn't matter. You can build a bridge in Denmark, in Poland, like more or less it's the same. You know what to expect. And I think it would be good for us to maybe also have something like that for AI or technology in general. So we feel safe. We know that once we know that when we are driving over this bridge, it's not going to collapse. It would be nice for us to know that if we are using those tools, we are not going to end up, I don't know, suicidal, for example.
But there's also, I'm a historian by trade, right? By education, not by trade. By education, there's a different. I said the opposite way. I'm a historian by education, not by trade anymore. But there's this thing about. Sometimes I think about what did we actually get from all the autocracy, right? The kings and all that back then. Well, they say that we own all the physical infrastructure. We own it. And then it became public domain, and then became critical public infrastructure in democracies, right? Do we need some how do we make the state own the digital infrastructure? Do we need a king to say it's mine, or what? I'm not saying we do, but you get my point. There's something missing here. It seems to me that the gap between understanding that everyone's using this all the time, critical messages are going on here. But it's in the hand of tech oligarchs, right? Why is this not like railroads? We broke that up and said it has to be, why is this not critical infrastructure?
I think power and money. And if you look at...
But there was also power and money in railroads and oil deposits and all that,
But I think but maybe the order of things was slightly different, right? Because what we have now is that someone put out this technology and we say, okay, how about we regulate it, and we attempt to regulate it, and then come in lobbyists and, results from the EU show that big tech is the second largest group of lobbying power in Brussels, right? After the financial market, not...
Did you read the Callous People? Did you read Callous People, the book about Facebook? Yeah, where she says, they just threw a little bit more love on the politicians when they were being critical. So suddenly they were dependent on Facebook because it gave them a lot of like and exposure. Oh,
I know a lawyer who, like years ago, was saying, how is it even allowed for anyone from the government side to use then Twitter, now X, or Facebook, or anything else, while we are already investing in .gov whatever platforms in each country that should be those platforms to communicate. But then, of course, everyone is on social media, so the politicians also want to be there. But I think we let the cat out of the bag, and now the question is whether we are able to do anything about it.
It's grown up to be a tiger now, right? Let the cat out of the bag.
Or I don't know, tens of them. I'm not sure I'm super optimistic here. I mean, I would like still to believe that there are things, for example, in Europe as a region, to be done. And fingers crossed that we are not, letting big tech decide on everything. But we will probably have to see.
I've asked this before, right? And maybe that could be, my final question here, right? Is will we stop consuming before we are consumed, Ewa?
I don't want to say it out loud, but looking at the world today, I think we may not even notice that we are getting consumed. Unfortunately. It takes a lot of self-reflection and I'm not saying I'm that self-reflecting myself, right? I can see myself falling for different things happening online and in tools I'm using, etc., etc. It really is not easy. It really is not easy because it's built on vulnerabilities of our brains, right? This is probably something I really don't like about technology, that it really, abuses your way of thinking and is not even being shy about it. No. So it's really difficult, because even if sometimes it's hard for you to even, put away your phone, right? So
it's somehow it was, when the ads were the customer, right? You're never the customer really in these technologies, but the ad companies, those that advertise, they're the customer, right? And that seems sort of like kind of okay. It's consumerism, capitalism on steroids. But then when suddenly it turns political and it start having political ambitions, so politicians become the customers, and I'm just the data subject, then things I feel is changing a little bit. But I'm always positive. I try to stay positive because I think that the people move away from things when they seem lame, right? Like my kids, they don't like Facebook. They don't use it at all, right? It dies, and then they move on, and it's very Bourdieu. I put my trust in something like the Bourdieu thing, right? That we move to the next thing, and that will eventually be the death of those ambitions. Right?
Question is what the next thing is, because if you think of moving from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok, I'm a little bit skeptical of what may come next. But what we are seeing, I think today, when we look, as I said, looking further than just technology market, we are seeing people turning back a little bit on technology. People seeking offline time, people seeking quiet, people looking at, okay, do I really need that much noise and highs and really being on all the time?
I've been thinking so much about this because back in the day you had these experts, these intellectuals on TV and radio and all that, and people were like, they were the elites that Bourdieu talked about, right? And then you would follow them to some extent. They moved away and then you would move with them, and then they'll move somewhere else, right? But it seems they're being cut off today. People don't care. People watch X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, and they don't watch Sting. They watch, someone singing Sting, right? Someone neighbor singing Sting instead. They want to watch themselves, right? We don't listen to them anymore. And that I remember the funniest thing was in a couple of years back, the meat, before the prices went crazy, the meat consumption in Denmark had increased per capita. And when you said that to anyone in Copenhagen, they were like, no, because me and all my friends, we don't eat meat, But everyone outside of Copenhagen were eating more meat, and that shadow thing, that the loss of the intellectual. I think Tony Jutte, the historian, wrote about that. The death of it, the death of someone we believe in, an expert. We don't believe in experts. We believe in our own reflections. I'm getting very philosophical here. Sorry about that.
No, that's not a problem. I'm not very optimistic here. I'm more saying there are those trends that we are seeing, but it doesn't mean that we suddenly, all decide no longer use social media and we will going to be back to reading big paper books. But here I would say never give up on, doing your work. If you see it makes sense to read a book, read a book. If you see that someone is saying things that are stupid and there is no expertise behind it, don't listen to them and point it out. Because I think we also reached, one thing, we are all living in our own echo chambers, which is a huge challenge. But I think the other is that we reached a point where we feel like we can't say that someone is wrong, or that it's not okay to say that we should not be listening to that person because, they have 1 million followers. So their power is in the fact that they have followers, not necessarily in their actual expertise. So as much as we can in our own echo chambers, just call it out. and go out of your echo chamber. It's not nice sometimes, because sometimes you come across someone who has like a completely different view. So don't talk to them as, don't try to convince them. Just listen to them, because sometimes listening to someone who has like a completely different opinion can be super, super eye-opening.
That note makes me even more proud that you decided to speak with me on this podcast, Eva. Also, I don't think you think I'm on the completely different opinion, but I think that I just felt like you said, and it's good to talk to good people. So I don't know if you did that, but it felt that way. But am I praising myself? Maybe I did, but I don't know what I just did. Sorry, I can't stop myself now. I've stopped myself. But Eva, I think maybe the end to that discussion is that that outcome, as you started by saying. What outcome are we hunting? And has anyone ever asked that also about social media and all the new technologies that we're using? What are we actually there for, right? I think that's interesting to discuss as well. But I have enjoyed this conversation tremendously. And I think it's been awesome to be able to pick your brain and your expertise and your long experience as an analyst in the IT service market and in Europe and in AI as well. And I only have one final question for you, Eva, which I know you've been looking forward to forever, right?
Of course. The tough one.
So, Eva, what is the only constant?
It wasn't really easy to think of one only constant that is here. And I really spent some time looking for what I should say, because people usually say, well, change, well, future, things like this. And I thought what I want to stay a constant, and what I think we are slowly getting rid of with what we are seeing from tech, and this is friction. I think we've seen so much and heard so much about, well, we need everything to be frictionless. No problems, no challenges, no hurdles. Everything just needs to go smoothly without problems. And I think friction is needed. I think friction is what moves us forward, right? It's like basic physics. If there's no friction, we either don't move anywhere or we are like in a free fall. And friction is something that makes us question things. Friction is something that also opens doors to novelty, to innovation, to looking at things from a different perspective. And in the context of AI, for example, if you look at the recently published paper about how much everything becomes the same and homogeneous, and LLMs making sure that you don't come up with any new ideas, everything being good enough, but bland and vanilla. Is that the world that we want to live in? Or do we want to live in a world where I can say something, you can say something, and we are not in two separate echo chambers that we said before, but we are, well, there is a friction between us, but thanks to this friction, we are coming up with something new and moving this world forward. And I think it's super important also in the context of what comes next and what our kids are going to end up with. I don't want my son to, easily produce generic opinions that anyone else can produce, right? I want him to be very critical and very independent in the way he thinks. So I think friction is what we are needing, and frictionless is something that we should get away with. I hope this answers a question.
Yeah, but it does, and I think it's a wonderful answer, because friction is also, when you meet another person, you meet another person, right? You meet a stranger as a friend you haven't met before, all those things, but there's friction in that, right? There's friction in going to the supermarket, there's friction in everything, and are you interacting with people? Do you look people in the eyes? Are you taking that friction, right? That's what gives value to us. That's the human outcome, right? The societal outcome, the civilization outcome. That's what we are.
And this is exactly what those chatbots that are always nice and agreeing with you are taking away.
Yes.
So
yes. I think
let's have some friction in life.
Let's have some friction, Ewa. And thank you so much for hopefully bringing some friction to the minds and perspectives of the listeners of The Only Constant. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you, Ewa. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Lovely.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.